Welcome to Sacred Realms. It's a great day in Hyrule, y'all. Welcome to Sacred Realms, a Zelda Retrospective Podcast. I'm your host, Lyndon Willoughby, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Matt Willoughby. How you doing, Matt?
Hey, Lyndon, I am good. It is it's a cold day in Texas, and we are in a unique situation tonight. This is the first time in many a moon that we are not looking at each other during.
Yeah, it doesn't happen all that often, but sometimes circumstances just necessitate that we do this thing 100% in ways that are afforded to us by virtue of living in such a digital age. And tonight is that kind of night. What's that phrase that people say about best of intentions, right? I mean, we had like a whole way that we were planning on doing this episode. And part of that plan involved doing it a week earlier than we're actually doing it. We got knocked off of our schedule for very good reasons, right? Like holiday and vacation and lots of different factors were involved here. But we ended up having to record a week later than we were originally planning on doing. And that would have been fine in and of itself, but the rescheduled recording date happened to coincide with the one and only, every now and again it's like twice a year, but usually once per year occurrence of ice and snow in Texas. It's very, very cold here. It's not going to be above freezing for the next few days, and we got a little wintry precipitation. So basically what that meant is that our MLK Day was spent completely at home, and we are now recording this episode remotely.
Yeah, I mean, we had this great idea, right? So our original idea was, hey, let's record this episode on vacation with a mountain vista behind us, with our little brother and third piece of the Willoughbro Triforce, Jackson, accompanying us. And that was a really good idea. We even brought all of our podcasting equipment. We all came very prepared. We had
got it through security.
We had the game played. We were ready to go. And then just vacation happened. And it was the first vacation where all of us brought a spouse/significant other. And, I don't think we planned accordingly for how much we would not want to spend 2.5 hours of our vacation time recording a podcast when the other opportunity was spend time with our loved ones in the mountains.
Yeah, socialize and gain strength from the family time,
Indeed.
There just never ended up being a night where we were all kind of like, yeah, this seems like a good time to go, spend 2.5 hours at a computer. And it's fine. It's totally fine. And we have plans to get back into our ahead of schedule recording situation that we've been on the last few weeks. So it's all good, nothing too terrible. But since you already dropped the big hook for this episode, the reunification of the Willoughbro Triforce, I'm going to choose right now to go ahead and introduce our guest of the evening, the one, the only, Jackson Willoughby, who hasn't been on for a little while, but loves the Minish cap, one of his favorite Zelda games of all time, and so he just couldn't stay away from the show for this season. Jackson, how you doing tonight?
Man, I'm doing great. I am using my newly purchased podcast equipment, which I will say I did not buy for this podcast, so I'm not desperate. But I'm here. I'm here and I'm having a great time. The Eagles are getting their butts kicked on national television right now, which is nice.
Woot.
Yeah, and we're existing, 24 hours past the Cowboys getting their butts completely 1,000% kicked in that game. So yeah,
I'm taking a year-long break from being a Cowboys fan. I'm trying to tell Jerry Jones that I don't want to give him my money or support next year. So Buffalo all the way this time, baby.
Dude, absolutely.
Going with
Go
the
Bills.
Buffalo Bills.
Bills Mafia, baby. Bills Mafia.
Cool. That is the sound of two Cowboys fans who are doing anything and everything that they can to take the sting out of what happened this week.
It was really bad.
It was awful.
Is it
the worst it's ever been in a long time?
Dude, honestly, I've been a Cowboys fan my entire 30 years of life, and I honestly am questioning why. Like, it's not even enjoyable anymore. It's just so sad. So sad.
Well, you know what? I gotta believe there's light at the end of this tunnel. Is it gonna be next year, 10 years, 100 years? Who's to say? But
the year after Jerry Jones lays in a grave, will the curse be broken and the Cowboys will win their Super Bowl?
I think that's about
He made a deal with a blood demon. That's the only explanation. In the 90s, he made a deal with a blood demon and said, I'm betting all of my life on this trade and drafting this quarterback number 1 overall. And the blood demon said, all right, you'll win some Super Bowls, but you won't win any in the next millennia as long as you live.
And so are you insinuating that this blood pact involves Jerry Jones living for a millennia?
No. I'm saying in the next millennia, since it was coming up on the 2000 change.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes more sense. But I will say that there are those who are not convinced that Jerry Jones is a mortal being and that he will be a plague upon this earth for the next 1,000 years. Are they correct?
He's going to get the Walt Disney.
I'm not sure.
He'll be
Disney
haunting us for
sure. He'll be the head in the jar deep underneath the stadium.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see whether or not that pans out. I have no firm thoughts about it one way or the other, but we'll definitely see. I'm not a huge sportsman myself. I can enjoy a Cowboys game for the purposes of like social activity. And if they're actually in a series of important games and seem like they're gonna do well, or at least that they have a chance to do well, then I can get into it a little bit, but that's about as far as things go for me. I'm much more of a Formula One guy. Thanks for that, Jackson.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
But so anyway, we have all that being said, we've been playing Minish Cap the last week. I'm actually fairly far ahead of where we're recording for this episode right now. We're going to be doing another episode 2 days after this one with the detective, which is going to be really great, but have continued loving this game just as much as I have been the entire rest of the season up until this point. Jackson, you were very adamant about being a guest on this season of the show, and I would love if you would spend a few minutes giving us the rundown on your Minish Cap experience and just let us know why that is. Why do you love it so much? Tell us about your history with the game.
Yeah, I think you're going to really love my story for this. So when I first played Minish Cap, it was on the micro that you got from Circuit City, the red and gold one.
Yeah.
And I played Minish Cap on that. And I don't know, for some reason, the shrinking down, the music that is in Minish Woods, but also like throughout all the different areas is just so iconic. I thought when I was little, shrinking down to a Minish size and walking around felt very much like something you could do in our backyard, like go outside and do that. And so that appealed to my very young person. I think I was like 7 or 8 maybe. So like really little. And it's always just been that game that like stuck with me. The animation of Eslo is like super memorable, and like standing on those stumps is like, I don't know. It's just one of those things that it's so unique and very different from every other Zelda game that it kind of just sticks with you. And gives it its own special vibe that I've always remembered. And when I booted it up on my wife's Switch Lite, it just feels really nostalgic and happy. And it is a happy game, and I really like that.
Yeah. Do you remember how old you were when you played it for the first time?
Yeah, like 7 or 8.
Okay, cool. So, and did you beat it at that time, or was it just one of those situations where you kind of just screwed around with it a little bit?
Yeah, I screwed around with it. I think I beat it later when I was probably in middle school on a Game Boy Advance that I found laying around the house one day.
Yeah, that would have actually been our original Game Boy Advance that we had. It was just the regular
The
old
purple.
Yeah, purple, no backlit screen, the whole deal. Yeah, that was our family Game Boy Advance, and then I think I bought myself an SP at some point because I was
the
playing a
silver
fair
one.
amount of Game Boy games. Yeah, the silver one. Yeah, and I wanted the backlit screen, which was the big deal about that. And then much later, when I was in late high school, actually that timing doesn't line up. I don't know. I was in high school for sure, but yeah, I got that micro that everyone loves to talk about on this show, and that thing is great. I actually I had to go through a few drawers earlier this week because we've been talking about it so much. I was like, I know I have it around somewhere. I just want to make sure that I haven't lost it, and I have not. I located it. It's in great shape. It needs a charge, and it would be ready to go. So,
Well, your timeline actually does match up. If you were in high school, well, you graduated when I was in third grade. So I was only 8 or 9 when you graduated high school.
Okay.
I would have been 9. So
Yeah,
that matches.
It's maybe I had it for a while and then you found the micro though, because the thing about it is that by the time that I was graduating high school, the Nintendo DS was like well into its life cycle, and the Game Boy Advance wouldn't have been something that was on shelves still. So I'm not sure exactly what the date range is on all of that. I could do some research probably and figure it out, but I'm not in the mood to do that right now because we're recording pod. I'm not going to stop this. I'm not going to turn this car around just so that I can do some research. It's what
Do you
nerds-
think you're going to do homework for this?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
That's nerd shit right there. Anyway,
That's
maybe
too committed. We can't
Let's
take
t-
ourselves too seriously.
Yeah, exactly. Let's take that discussion into the Discord and see if we can come up with some good conclusions based on that. But anyway, yeah. So I know that you have not played a ton of different Zelda games. Like you probably played a quarter to a third of the overall series. Would you say that's right, Jackson?
Yeah, I would say that's right.
Okay, cool. And if you had to just take a stab at where Minish Cap lands in the middle of all that for you, where would it be?
So Minish Cap is tied currently with the remake of A Link's Awakening, and I just think that the graphic update and the usability update that they made to Link's Awakening is so good that it does come down to a tie there for best top-down Zelda. And if I'm being honest, I think that top-down Zeldas are hidden really nice right now, because in my phase of life that I'm in, I get usually like 30 minutes to like just sit down and game. And top-down Zeldas, especially Minish Cap, is perfect for that like 30-minute interval. You can get so much stuff done that you just can't in like 3D games like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and even Ocarina of Time. Stuff just takes too long in those games, and Minish Cap, it feels very rewarding to just knock stuff out. So yeah, out of the top downs that I played, like Link to the Past and a little bit of Spirit Tracks, Link's Awakening, and Minish Cap, it's definitely my favorite top down, and it's the favorite one that I've played in a while, just because it's just fitting that schedule really nice.
It's so interesting because I know one of the things that a lot of people say about Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is that they're sort of known for being games that people consider easy to pick up and just get something meaningful done in 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, what have you. And it's interesting because I see that, and I think that is true, right? Like in 30 minutes, you could go knock over a few shrines, or hit up a moblin camp and get yourself some new weapons, or go find some new fusing materials, or like there's an endless amount of stuff you can do in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom in 30 minutes. But I've always felt that it's stressful to me to imagine spending only 30 minutes with either of those games, right?
Well, so it's the open world problem, which is there is so much to do, and there's not always a clear direction on what you should do next, that it's kind of overwhelming to decide, where do I go? What do I do? How do I spend my time? And it's really easy to lose track of how much time you've spent because there is so much to do and it is so spread out. So that's kind of where I come from in that aspect, is open world games. And it's not just Zelda open worlds, it's all open world games. Just they can be too overwhelming unless you've like replayed the game multiple times and you just like know it by heart like I do with Mass Effect.
Yeah. No, and that was definitely something that I was feeling acutely with Tears of the Kingdom on this playthrough, right? Like I was constantly having to balance the whole, well, I want to get through this game and I don't want to get spoiled, and so I want to know what the story is, but at the same time I don't want to rush it, but there's 8,000 things to do, and it is just a lot mentally to juggle. And it's one of the reasons that I'm excited to go back and replay that game now that I know the story, right? Because those aren't things that I'm going to have to worry about. But I think open world game fatigue generally is something that I identify a lot with. And I'm really with you there, Jackson. And good God, I mean, if my early 20s brother just recently married with no kids is feeling that way about open world games, then I feel super valid feeling that way, like with my wife and toddler and 1.5 jobs and like all that other stuff. So thank you.
No, you're so welcome.
Yeah. I mean, I think Minish Cap is the perfect bite-sized game. And like Lyndon and I were just talking, it's time to put up the poll for next season. And it's really hard to believe that we're already there. It feels like we just started this game, and it's kind of sad to be so close to the end because we're having so much fun with it. But yeah, it's a perfect like little chunk. It's really great.
Yeah, I think.
Well, and because it is so little, you get yourself carried away with how much you've done in a playthrough. So it goes really fast.
Yeah, it does. And I think that once we get to the end of the game, I know I'm going to feel sad that it's over. And I think that my gut reaction is going to be to just immediately say like, well, I wish it had been 25% longer, or whatever. And I'm going to have to really check myself on that, because I've always got to remind myself, it is okay for something to be short and sweet and to just be a
journey.
Right. Exactly. It is okay for something to not be a mega, like, double-sized experience, and for it to completely succeed within the boundaries of what it is. I think that's where I'm going to be at with Minish Cap at the end of this whole thing, unless something goes really off the rails, but doesn't seem like that's probably going to happen. And I know, Jackson, you've played what most people would consider to be the best of the top-down Zeldas, right? You've played Link's Awakening, you've played A Link to the Past, and so for you to say that Minish Cap is really up there for you, I mean, that's high praise, right? Like you've played the ones that people consider to be the heavy hitters.
Yeah, it's great. I think that Minish Cap is great because it gives you all the good feels of classic Zelda, and yet it still feels very different. Like it almost feels like someone from a indie studio made a Zelda-like game, but it's not, and it doesn't feel like truly fake. It feels really well done and somehow different.
Yeah, so we had a really interesting and fun conversation with Max about this very topic when on his episode a few weeks ago, about the fact that this game having been developed by Capcom and not by Nintendo was something that you kind of were able to feel during the play process, right? Like exactly what you're talking about, where it feels slightly different in certain imperceptible ways, but not necessarily in a bad way. I continue to feel like this game is riding a very thin line between the genuine article and just being a very convincing homage. I do think it lands on the right side of that, as opposed to somebody's like fan interpretation of Zelda. And I got to give it props for that. I really do think it's continuing to feel like a very authentic Zelda experience, where I'm sure it would have been easy to veer into not that, right? Like somebody just like doing their best interpretation of what Zelda should be.
Yeah, it's really a truly phenomenal game, and I'm so glad that we got it. Like it's so rare for Nintendo to, allow this to happen with their IP. But man, like if we would have missed out on one of the best Zelda games, in my opinion, one of the best Zelda games that we've played in the run of this podcast, if we had missed out on it because they wouldn't let Capcom do it, man, like this is truly phenomenal. It is, and you're right, it is different, but it's not bad at all. It's all, I wouldn't say it's better for being different, but it's not worse off.
So Jackson, I have to ask you real quick, we're coming in at the halfway point of the season. Is there anything that you would like to say about your playtime with the Minish Cap so far, without getting into stuff that we're going to talk about this on this episode specifically, like just observations, general gameplay stuff, the story, whatever you feel like talking about.
Yeah. So, okay, I went through the first 2 sections of game, and I was sitting there thinking, every time I play this game, I know exactly what I'm going to say on the podcast about what I would want to change, because there's so much good to say about this game. And so I was like trying to think of things to be like, yeah, but I want to be balanced and give some negatives too. And I had them perfectly lined up. And one of them was the speech text is so slow. And I was like, this is getting ridiculous. Get to vacation, and I'm trying to keep it in while I'm playing on my section of game for this podcast. I was trying to keep it in and not tell you guys, to keep it a surprise for the pod. And then it randomly, my thumb just hits B in the middle of a conversation and it speeds through. And I was like, are you kidding me? You could do this the whole time? I sat through every single damn conversation and every single like training thing. It was horrible. And I was like, this is the worst part of this game. This is taking forever. And then I had an even greater realization. You can do the same thing with the shrinking animation, and you don't have to watch that stupid animation every time. And after about 10 animations, I was like, all right, I hate this. I hate this. This is terrible. Take it out of the game, please. And then I realized you can just press B and skip, or no, you double press the shrink button and it skips the animation. And I was like, how did no one tell me this? Why did the game not tell me this? This is crucial information.
You just said a bunch of very true things, Jackson. Those are all good tips to have. I think you can actually set the text bubble speed at the beginning of the game too. Like when you create your save file, it gives you the option of like
interesting,
fast, medium, or slow.
I didn't see that. There's also no menu button. Like there's no settings. Like that's how you know it's an old game. There's no settings. There's no menu. Like you just gotta work with your inventory screen and your map screen and stuff like that. And so it was a frustrating time.
It's a product of a different time for sure.
It is. Other than that, I think I'm just having so much fun. Every time I walk into a new section, you just get like nostalgia of the music. And I think that this has a great thing from Link's Awakening, which is the townspeople are all very interesting and they feel well-written characters despite having almost nothing to say. They just seem like a real town that you're trying to help, right? Like even the king is great. I think that the townspeople like that run shops are great, and it makes it feel better. It makes it feel like a better game. And I think Link's Awakening is one of the only times we've seen that in Zelda outside of a 3D game. And I think Minish Cap does the same thing.
Well, I think even some 3D I think even some 3D games don't do that too super well. But it is one thing that we've talked about on pretty much every episode is just Castletown is great. There's an authenticity to it that we're really enjoying. Going to talk about a little bit more of that in this episode, right? Because I'm pretty sure our bloopy trails. I mean, I don't know if you can have a bloopy trail section in a Minish Cap episode and not touch on what's going on in Castletown. So we will definitely get to it. Worry you not. We'll get to a lot of interesting conversation in the Sacred Realms rundown this week because this was a really fun and interesting section of game. Can't wait to get into it. Before we do that, let's go ahead and get Whiskey Bit out of the way because due to the nature and format of our recording this week, I think Whiskey Bit's going to be a bit of a Wild West scenario for us this evening where we each brought something unique to the table and none of us knows what the other is drinking. So this is going to be a fun time. And of course, we have the Whiskey Maestro himself in the house with us tonight to walk us through all of these things and to tell us everything about what we're drinking. So Matt, I'm going to pass it to you first. What's your Whiskey Bit selection of the evening?
So I'm drinking the Balcones single malt tonight, which we don't drink a lot of Balcones normally. I like it a little bit more than you do, Lyndon, so it's not something we share very often. But man, I am a big fan. It's very molasses and syrup heavy and just quite delicious. It's a Texas local, nice and mesquite smoky even. Terribly delicious. Terribly delicious. It's so amazing. There you go.
Would you say it's great and terrible?
Yes. Much
as
like
the Dawn?
As the Dawn. Exactly.
Yeah.
Matt, is that a store pick or is that just the regular
Just the
offering?
regular.
Hey, nothing wrong with a little 104
Amen.
proof, you know?
Nice and warm on this cold winter's night.
Matt, would you say that it's treacherous as the seas?
I would not say that it is treacherous as the seas because it's never steered me wrong. But I understand what you're going for.
Will all love it and despair?
Yes, all will love it and despair. Thank you, Galadriel, Lady of Light.
There we go.
That scene gives me nightmares. Seriously, that is so terrifying of a scene when you watch it for the first time and you're like, oh, like this place gives weird vibes, but that lady seems nice. And then that scene happens and you're like 7 watching it. Like,
dude, Peter Jackson really went hard on that scene. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, as like a 11-year-old watching Fellowship for the first time, that scene and then Bilbo turning into Gollum, those two together.
Dude, Bilbo turning into Gollum for that half second is still terrifying, and I'm 30 years old and I know it's coming every time, and it still scares me.
Are you talking about the intro for
No, whenever Frodo's putting on the mithril vest and Bilbo goes, "Can I hold it one last time?"
Yeah, that one's terrible.
It's certainly a moment. It still gets me. If I'm not ready for it, right, or if all the lights are down or whatnot, then I'm jumping every single time. Okay, whiskey bit tonight. This is maybe one of the more prestigious whiskeys that we've had on the show, but I am drinking the spoils of war tonight, Jackson and Matt. I poured for myself my sample that I received as a winner of our New Year's Eve whiskey tasting event. This is a Stag Junior batch 22, I believe is what it was, right, Jackson?
Ooh.
22B would be that one.
Cool. Yeah. So New Year's Eve, we did this wonderful thing where several members of our family, my best friend Adam, the detective himself, Michael Maker, we all got together. We pitched in and we split into teams and provided certain very nice whiskeys for a blind tasting. And the agreement was that the team who had the whiskey that everyone liked the most at the end of the tasting got to take home samples of everybody else's whiskey. So Stag Junior was the one that you actually brought to the table, wasn't? No, Jackson, you were on the team with me and we won. Matt, did you bring the Stag Junior?
Yes, we brought the Stag.
Okay, cool. And
it came last. Everyone except for me put it last.
It was weird.
I did.
It was a weird day.
It was a weird day. I mean, when you're drinking it like this in a vacuum, not putting it up against 3 other really, 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 really good and unique things, it's amazing. Stag Junior is fantastic. It's one that a lot of people have probably heard of, and so I'm enjoying it quite a lot. It's about as pure a Kentucky bourbon experience as you could hope to enjoy. So, Stag Junior for the win, and again, got that nice high proof value. What is this, Jackson? Probably 120 something.
No, so 22A is 132.2 and 22B I believe is 130.2 or 130.1. It's around
Dear
there.
God. Well,
definitely in the 130s.
There you go. That's a whiskey that's stout enough for a 15-degree evening in Texas. That's where I'm at with that.
There you go.
How about you, Jackson? What's your whiskey bit contribution for the evening?
Yeah, so I've already started, obviously, and I do a warm-up pour of something a little bit lower proof, which was a Wild Turkey Kentucky Spirit Single Barrel, 101 proof, deliciousness. I love Wild Turkey, so very happy to have that, which I followed up with the perfect rye for a winter's night where it's very cold. It is a Nulu toasted rye, barrel proof. It's 112.4, and this thing is just molasses and pine needles and just delicious. Absolutely love that. I followed that up with a little bit of Penelope 15-year American light whiskey, which is 128.4 proof. Just delicious, super vanilla and fruit forward. Absolutely love that bottle. Which brings me on to what I'm going to have next. And I would love for my brothers to help me in this decision.
Yes.
I am deciding on my next pour will either be Stag Junior Batch 22A, not the one Lyndon's drinking, the batch before his. Or am I going to have some Joseph Magnus Cigar Blend Batch 51?
Well, I'm going to vote for the Stag as somebody who's currently drinking Stag and really enjoying my life decisions. That's just where I fall with it. So
I'll vote for the Stag as well.
There you go.
All right, we'll go Stag.
There you go. That's such a nice noise. Thanks for providing that, if nothing else. But
you're welcome.
Yeah. Like I said, we have the whiskeysman on the podcast tonight, so there you go. It's going to be a fun one. Everyone,
and I showed up packing.
Yeah, as you always do, Jackson. I don't know that there's been a point in the last 2 years that you haven't showed up packing. I think like your emergency preparedness bag has a compartment for several different whiskeys. So you are truly a legend among men, Jackson Willoughby. Where would we be without you? But that's all that we have for Whiskey Bit tonight until Jackson has his follow-up later and lets us know if he feels like he made the right decision going with the Stag Junior over the Joseph Magnus Cigar Blend. Is that going to be the case? We'll find out. We'll figure it out later. But
we'll find out because this Stag is freaking great.
Yeah. It's delicious. It's truly hard to go wrong. All right, y'all. Well, let's go ahead and get into some housekeeping and then jump into the episode, dive into the episode, if you will. Is it our water dungeon episode? Might be. Might just be. That's a very knowing noise that we all just made there. It is. It's the water episode, okay? It's a good one. It's a really, really good one. All right, y'all. If you didn't know, Sacred Realms is a weekly re-examination of The Legend of Zelda, one little slice at a time. Sacred Realms drops every Wednesday and is available on all major podcast networks. Every week, we play a new section of a Zelda game, and then we sit down here to talk and to drop our hot takes. If that sounds fun to you, please head over to Apple Podcasts, hit that subscribe button, and be sure to leave us a review. 5-star reviews are greatly appreciated, and they have a chance to get a shout out here on the show. If you want more Sacred Realms in your life, you can head over to patreon.com/Sacred Realms Pod to get access to our Discord channel, listener mail, vote on what game we play next, and so much more. Additionally, one of the benefits that Master Sword patrons and above get is that we read their names every week here on the show. Those legendary individuals are Brandon, Shrikewill, Joseph, Nintendo, Adam, Sakura Sky, Art, Jeremy, Dante 2, Tom, Andy, Billy, Connor, Rachel, Shepherd Street, Matthew, Chris, Daniel, Fallout 907, Kelso, Chris, Tiffany the Star, Patrice, Stephanie, Darknuck, Il Maestro himself, who just released a banging new album on Spotify. Goodnight Hyrule is a certified banger. I love it so much. Brian, George, Mike, Dylan, Lennon, Kolku, Rowan, Josh, Nick, Dante 1, Gep, Brittany, Davey, Haru the Mighty, Derek, Albert, Mark, Andy, Cameron, Ben, Daniel, Nick D_TV, Hyrule Interviews, aka Max Nichols, Garrett, and Drew. These are the most legendary of individuals. And I would shrink myself down to minuscule size and drop into an icy cavern to fight oversized monsters with any of them any day of the week.
I would totally do that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm down for an adventure.
Something you could at least get a good story out of, right?
No doubt about that.
Yeah. All right. Well, without further ado, let's get into the Sacred Realms rundown, which is, of course, a 6-part analysis of what we played this week and the feelings that it made us feel. Today, we are covering the Minish Cap, Chapter 4. Part 1 of the Sacred Realms rundown is, as always, the plot recap. This week, read by me. What? I'm doing the plot recap?
Yay! Crazy. Matt gets a break. Yay! Matt's been moving, so Matt gets a break.
Yeah, moving definitely gets you out of having to do the plot recap for a week. And and you know what? I enjoyed writing this one. I'm going to enjoy recording it. It's going to be a great time. I'm going to enjoy all of that a lot more than you enjoyed moving, I think.
There's no doubt about that. Good Lord, this was probably the worst move we've had.
It's moving in general sucks. And hearing that it was a particularly bad move is, we're all demoralized on your behalf. It's tough. It's very tough.
I appreciate the moral support. Thank you.
You have it anytime. But without further ado, yes, this is the plot recap, and here we go. We stand in the midst of the ruins abandoned long ago by the Wind Tribe and turn the Ocarina of Winds over in our hands. We are still slightly disappointed to not have received the element that we came here in search of, but the Ocarina is a beautiful and mysterious object in its own right, and we can't wait to see what power it holds. Eslo suggests that we use the Ocarina to try and open a new path on our quest, and at these words, we remember the exploding Windcrest statues that we found all over Hyrule and the mark that they leave on the ground. Curious to see if there may be a connection, we play a tune on the Ocarina and are surprised when Zephyr, the bluebird that deposited the Ocarina at our feet in the first place, swoops in and carries us away as if we weigh nothing at all. Consulting our map, we see the markings we have made on all of the Windcrests so far discovered and decide to test our theory. We concentrate hard on the Hyrule Town Windcrest, and sure enough, moments later, Zephyr deposits us there. This new ability is sure to make our travels across Hyrule immeasurably simpler. Thinking back on our quest, we know that one of the elements is hidden in the direction of Lake Hylia, and consulting our map again, we see that a Windcrest is labeled there which we don't remember activating. Taking this as a sign, we call for Zephyr and a short ride later are deposited at the site of the Windcrest, on a bluff overlooking the vast body of water known as Lake Hylia. We can see a cluster of frozen ice patches on the surface of the lake, one of which looks to contain an entrance to a frozen cavern, but we have no way to safely get there and no way to swim in the frigid water even if we did. Looking around a bit closer to the crest, we see a cluster of mushrooms with a telltale tiny doorway, and sure enough, a handy shrinking stump is close by. Once shrunk down to Minish size, we enter the mushroom and find there a Minish who claims to be no ordinary Minish, but no less than the wisest of the wise. This seems like a helpful person to talk to for information on how to enter the frozen cavern, which is where we suspect the element of water to be hidden. Much to our dismay, the wise Minish has no concrete advice to offer, other than to reveal that a Minish elder named Librari once visited the frozen cave, which this Minish refers to as the Temple of Droplets, and suggests that a visit to the elder might aid us in also gaining entry. Feeling that the wisdom of this Minish has been disappointingly exaggerated, we head back to the library in Hyrule Town, where fittingly, the elder Librari is said to keep his residence. A handy shrinking jar later, and we are walking between shelves full of books as tall as skyscrapers from our perspective. We see Sturgeon, the library employee, standing next to a bookshelf with several tomes missing, and also see signs of tiny footprints leading that direction. Following the footprints brings us to a friendly town Minish who is lamenting his inability to gain access to the Elder's chambers. It seems that several of the missing books need to be in their regular spots in order for us to scale the shelves meant to reach the Elder, but unfortunately the 3 missing books have been gone for quite some time. Returning to human size, we approach the librarian Maggie, who is in charge of book returns and is most displeased that so many books have been checked out past their return date. We need the information that Librari possesses, and so we offer to help return the books if Maggie can remember who they're checked out to. Among the offending book renters are Julietta, the town cat lady, Dr. Left, who hoped to brush up on his knowledge of Picori legend, and the mayor of Hyrule Town himself, who sends us all the way out to his country villa where he had forgotten the book on his recent weekend away. During this process, we are able to spend some time exploring Hyrule Town at Minish size, and we stumble across a hidden grotto secreted behind the town fountain. Within this cavern are a variety of monsters, but also a chest containing a set of power bracelets which allow us to move human-sized objects even while in the miniature form of the Minish. Neat! Maggie is incredibly grateful for all of the library books to be back in their correct spots on the shelf, but not as grateful as we are to finally have access to Librari's home. After shrinking again, we scale the bookshelves and enter Librari's abode, where we find the feisty old Minish who thanks us for our assistance. We explain our predicament in being unable to enter the Temple of Droplets, and the Elder concedes that he does indeed have something that might help us. Pulling a nearby lever and giggling to himself, the Elder activates a secret trapdoor underneath our feet that sends us plummeting deep below Hyrule Town into yet another secret grotto. A little heads up would have been nice, but assuming that we're on course for a solution to our problem, it's difficult to complain too much about it. The secret grotto has an even nastier collection of enemies than the one where we received the power bracelets, but we are skilled with the blade, and eventually we win through to a chest which contains a set of flippers. These flippers should make traversal over water a cinch, and so we summon Zepha to us once more and hitch a ride to Lake Hylia. With the flippers on our feet, we take the plunge into the frigid waters of the lake and find swimming to be a breeze. Navigating to the floating ice shelf we saw earlier, it becomes apparent that this entrance will magically shrink us to Minish size the same way that the stumps and pots do. Once shrunk, we are deposited into the antechamber of the Temple of Droplets. It's an icy cavern where even the floors are frozen over, and Eslo is none too pleased about the piercing cold. It's not our favorite climate either, however the quest for the elements is too important to be sidetracked by these mere inconveniences, and so we press onward. The immense locked boss door, which in past temples has held the monster guarding the elements, is right in front of us, and we don't have to search far before we locate the key frozen in a block of ice. The roof of this room has a door which opens and closes, allowing sunlight into the room and thawing out the block of ice in no time. We feel that it might be too good to be true, obtaining the big key so early, but if ever we could use a break, it's now. With the massive boss door unlocked, we enter the chamber to find the element of water frozen in a block of pure ice and no noticeable way to thaw it out. Also, an unlucky Octorok appears to have been trapped in this temple and frozen solid. It sits at the far back of the room and would surely spell trouble for us in our current size were it unfrozen. Luckily, that doesn't seem likely at the moment, but we still need to find a way to thaw out the element of water. We decide to venture deeper into the temple to see if there might be a solution hidden there. The Temple of Droplets' lower levels are a maze of flooded chambers, icy rooms, and enemies of all kinds. In one of the lower chambers, we are ambushed by an immense chew, this one blue and covered in electric energy. Defeating this monster is a similar affair to the one we battled in the Deepwood Shrine. However, it seems more aggressive and is completely unable to be damaged while its electric defenses are active. Still, with patience and skill, we eventually defeat the beast and are rewarded with a flame lantern, a handy tool that has the ability to melt small ice blocks and to bring light to dark rooms. Our explorations eventually bring us back to two platforms within the chamber of the element of water, each with a lever that opens the chamber to the sunlight above. Once both levers have been pulled, the sunlight completely thaws the ice around the element, and we think that we're finally free to claim it. The sunlight has another effect which we did not foresee, however. The warmth thaws out the Octorok as well, and it wastes no time in inhaling the element of water and fleeing the chamber. Startled, we give chase immediately and eventually corner the massive beast in an immense room with a watery floor. We have no idea how to begin fighting this creature, and it isn't long before it begins shooting rocks at us from its maw. While non-threatening enough at our normal size, these rocks are massive in our Minish form, and we immediately pull out our trusty shield to try and defend against the onslaught. The shield is able to deflect those rocks back at the Octorok, and it instinctively tries to defend itself. Calling upon the power of the element it ingested, it freezes the floors we walk on and grants itself an icy carapace. The only part of the monster that seems vulnerable is a crop of flowers and vines on its back, and all we can think to do is to attempt to set those on fire. It's delicate work maneuvering around the monster on the ice floor, but finally we are able to ignite the greenery, which breaks the ice spell and returns the arena to normal. We set about trying to deflect more rocks back at the Octorok, but it's enraged now and is trying everything it can to attack us, including sucking us up into its maw and slamming the sides of the arena to drop large boulders on us. Finally, we dodge enough of its attacks and reflect enough stones back upon it, and the Octorok is defeated. The element of water floats in the air before us, and we happily claim it. We are thrilled to be so close to returning the full power of the Picori blade, and even more excited to be leaving this frozen cave behind us and to move forward in our quest to defeat Vati and save Zelda.
Well done, as always, Lyndon. You always do a good job when you fill in for me, and I appreciate it. Thank you for giving me that peace of mind that if I don't get around to it, then you've always got it covered.
I would never steal this responsibility from you on a more permanent basis because let's be real, there's only one plotsman in this relationship, but I'm happy to carry the mantle on a temporary basis every now and again. So makes me feel good. All right, well, let's get into part 2, which is our takes, where we talk about this section of the game and how it made us feel. Alrighty, general thoughts and opinions about this section of the game, and of course we can't talk about the dungeon just yet. Jackson, how are you feeling about the lead up to the Temple of Droplets?
Man, in this game there are so many side quests that, to be honest, it's hard to know what's a side quest and what's not, because there are so many little things you have to do between each dungeon. And the game is really good at telling you about where the next dungeon is and really bad about telling you what quests you need to follow to get to that dungeon and to acquire the things you need to progress to that dungeon. And so you end up doing like 90% of the side quests between the last temple and this one. And you can even do a lot of them after the fire temple too, but like, it's crazy. I spent so much time in Castletown running around doing errands, and every single time I'm like, great, you gave me another kinstone. I don't care. Where's the item I need to move on? And side quests are really fun, but eventually, you just got to look at Zelda Universe or something like that and get a guide and figure out, all right, who's the person off in this random small corner that I need to talk to? And then you find out that it's some little Minish that's living in a bookshelf. And you got to go collect some books for this dude. So
it's either that or the one NPC that you didn't talk to, right? It's one of those
exactly.
two things. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this whole game has been that way. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, I guess. I mean, I can see that being really frustrating if I was not this age, if I was younger, like when I was in middle school, I don't remember it being that hard. But I can assume that I probably got really frustrated with it.
Yeah, so it's an interesting conversation for sure, because a theme that I'm seeing develop in the between dungeon sections is that the plot takes you primarily back through Hyrule Town each and every time, right? You spend a lot of time going back to Hyrule Town to progress the objective and to get closer and closer to the next dungeon that you're trying to gain access to. Last week it was the Pegasus Boots and the Caster Wilds, and this week it's the Flippers. But just because of that, because you are spending so much time in Hyrule Town, you are in the path of so many bloopy trails and so many side quests, right? So the line can really start to blur, like you're talking about. And I definitely am kind of feeling what you're saying there, Jackson. One thing I would like to talk about before we even get into the Hyrule Town stuff this week is a quick question for both you and Matt. The sequence of events, I shouldn't even call it that because there's no sequence at all, but it's just figuring out how to get over to Lake Hylia for the first time, to get to that wind crest and to talk to the wisest of the wise Minish. The thing that sets you on the path to finding the Flippers. How long did it take y'all to figure out how to get over there?
I don't exactly remember how long it took, because at some point I used Zelda Universe to help me walk through this between section of the game, because there was so many things that you could do. So it could have been 20 minutes of 30 minutes plus of doing side quests in Hyrule Town before you realize, oh, I should probably figure out where to go now, because nothing seems to be working.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I don't remember having a terribly difficult time figuring out where to go. I was, like you said, Jackson, mostly just walking around doing stuff, and then I knew, because I've played this game before, that like we were coming up to the water temple, so obviously Lake Hylia is going to be where you want to be. You kind of do skirt Lake Hylia just by virtue of exploration with getting to the witch's hut. So, it wasn't a totally unknown space in any way. So, yeah, I mean, I would say that like it wasn't a big deal to me personally.
So I just went and looked this up, and yes, so there is no way to reach this wind crest before you warp to it for the first time. It's automatically unlocked. You go to it the first time you get the ocarina, and it's up on a platform. So like you fly to it, and as soon as you're up there, you can see the Temple of Droplets off to your right. And there's nothing else up there except for a Minish stump and a little Minish house. And then you can jump down off that platform. Like there's some shrubs you can chop down, and then you can jump back down to an area that you've been to before. Like you're right. This section of Lake Hylia, you were able to have, like, you could walk around in here before and see some of this stuff, but you just couldn't go very far. The reason that I ask about it is because I think it's so interesting, because it did take me a minute to figure out where I was supposed to go next. I wasn't necessarily looking at my Windcrest map when I played the Ocarina and trying to take stock of like, oh wait, I don't think this is one that I unlocked. Maybe I should fly there, right? Because it didn't even occur to me. Like why would I be looking for that? That's not something that that this game has even taught me is necessarily a possibility. And one reason that I'm talking about so much is because it's a direct callback to a similar situation in A Link to the Past, which is the way that you get into, I believe it's either Misery Mire or the desert. It's Misery Mire and in A Link to the Past, right? Like once you get the flute, the bird can kind of take you over there, and it's the only way to get in, and there's no way for you to know that that's how to do it. Like it was something that got us tripped up when we were playing that game for sure, Matt. And this is the exact this is the exact same thing. It's just really interesting. Like I don't think it's unfair necessarily, because the clues are there. Like if you're paying attention to the Windcrest map whenever it pops up on your screen, then like you can tell that there's one that you haven't been to before. So I don't think it's like a wildly unfair or completely obtuse thing. But it is odd to me that there's
we haven't used the O word in a while.
Yeah, we haven't. But I do think it's a little odd that you don't get any kind of like text hint or anything from Eslo, where like he does tell you like, hey, that's a nifty ocarina, you should pop it out and use it, but you don't really get anything past that.
Matt, what about you? Anything else on that?
No, I obviously, I don't think it was unfair at all. I didn't even realize that it wasn't something I had unlocked. Honestly, I fast traveled from the Temple of Winds directly to Hyrule Castle Town, so I saw it when I opened it, and I was like, oh, I didn't realize I'd opened a fast travel point when I went and saw the witch. And like, that's kind of how I assumed it had happened. So I think the benefit of it being so prominent on the mini map is a real benefit to that specific thing. So, I'm going to say that I think it's fine. But I did not realize that it was a callback, and I think that's really cool. So that's a great call, Lyndon, on the callback there.
And it's so funny because it's the exact same thing, right? Like you play a musical instrument and a bird carries you off, and that's the only possible way to get to an area that you haven't been before. So yeah, I just thought that was a fun little tidbit. But anyway, this is the sequence of events that carries us to one of the most hilarious characters that I think we've met in the game so far, which is this little Minish guy who says that he is the wisest of the wise. And then as soon as we start asking him any questions about anything, he has no answers. And all he can do is refer us to the actual wisest Minish that he knows. This is what sends us off to the library in Hyrule Town to meet the aptly named Minish named Librari. You get it? It's the Minish who lives in the library. It's Librari. It's so clever. Anyway, so this kicks off the whole sequence of events that gets us access to the flippers, which is always a fun time in any top-down Zelda game because I appreciate being able to swim, right? Like being able to not cross bodies of water. Especially there's this there's this portion of Hyrule Town that I always wish I could just swim across. And until you get the flippers, you can't. And it's a huge pain in the butt. It's whenever you're trying to get over to the side of town where the dog is blocking the stairway, you know? And before you get the flippers, you have to like do this elaborate shrinking, expanding, shrinking system to get between several different houses, and then you can get over there. So anyway, all that is to say, I've been looking forward to getting the flippers for quite a while. But this kicks off our quest to go find Librari, who has the information that we need to get into the Temple of Droplets. And the only way that we can gain access to this character is by doing the extensive library book return quest. And I want to talk about this for a minute, because this to me was really starting to push the boundaries of not like, is it busy work? Is it not? Is this something that I'm willing to do without belly aching about it? I don't know. It started to feel like it was taking just a little bit longer than I really appreciated. How'd you feel about the library book situation, Matt?
Yeah, no, I felt exactly the same way. Like, I'm an RPG person. I am a big do quests, and sometimes very lengthy quests in order to accomplish things. And this was just like really pushing it as far as like, oh my God, fetch quests are always the worst quests. And this was just 3 fetch quests back to back to back for the same type of item. And yeah, was not my favorite thing in the world for sure.
Yeah. How about you, Jackson?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really mind it so much. I think that the repetitiveness by the third book wasn't that great. I don't know. It definitely could have been better. It could have been a little bit shorter. It would have been nice if one of them had action in it. Like, what if one of them was you had to go into that room in Hyrule Town where you get put to sleep and you fight all those enemies, and that's how you get the book, is it's in the chest or something like that. Like, that would have made it interesting if that was like a necessary thing rather than just a side quest. But yeah, it goes on a little bit too long, and I don't know, but it wasn't horrible for me.
Okay, yeah, personally. No, I don't want to misrepresent my feelings. I didn't think that it was a horrible time or any of that. It's I don't know. It did feel like it dragged on just a little bit too long for me. And part of this too was just that trying to come up with the mental connections of like, oh, you're telling me which character has this book. I'm trying to remember who that is off the top of my head. I think I know. Let me go over to this house where I think that person lives and check on it. And, I think for 2 of them, I got that right in one. And for one of them, I was just kind of like, I had to wander around a bit. And I was like, wait, does this person live here? I'm not exactly sure. Like it does require some legwork. And I think that was the thing that bugged me about it more so than anything else. And it's not necessarily I feel bad for complaining about it, right? Because Zelda games do this sort of thing every now and again. It's just a part of the series, and I had a fun enough time with it regardless of that. And it's also nice because it's like, I feel bad that I'm complaining about it because this gives you face time with several different characters, right? Jackson, earlier you were talking about how impressive this cast of side characters and the denizens of this town are, and this is just another excuse to be spending time with them, right? Like to be learning more about them and to be filling in shades of these characters and who they are. So
I love the intentionality of that, though. I think that shows a little bit of something that's different from this game versus other Zelda games. Maybe that's that Capcom touch. You are a little bit more intentionally surrounded and interacting with these characters, all very strange and different from each other, and you would never interact with this many different characters that are just NPCs walking around Hyrule Town or Castle Town or wherever it is.
Yeah, certainly not in like Ocarina or even Twilight Princess. I mean, we've said this a few times this season, but like this version of Castle Town puts most others to shame. And that
You basically only talk to shopkeepers in other games. You know?
With an occasional isolated character-based side quest, but
now you get to talk to dogs and cats, and it's awesome.
Exactly. And it's not like we don't get anything extra out of this. I mean, part of this whole quest line involves getting the power bracelets, right? Which are what allows us to push around bookshelves in Minish form, which is a really nice thing to have. That opens up quite a lot of exploration, especially in Hyrule Town.
I completely agree. Yeah, I love that you get really important items that aren't dungeon items. I think because you have a very limited number of dungeons in this game, they space those out really well. And it's not just the dungeon that's important to getting items, it's also the way you get to a dungeon is how you acquire important items. And I really like that.
Well, and there's kind of there's actually several different little mini dungeons that this whole quest is comprised of when you really break it down. Of course, there's like the chambers, right, that you get shooped into. We'll talk about the flippers one here in just a minute, but the power bracelets are kind of, I mean, they're in a little mini dungeon, all on its own. It's hidden behind the fountain in Hyrule Town. But I mean, you could kind of qualify the stuff that you have to do to even get there in Minish form as a miniature dungeon experience as well, right? I mean, you've got to make your way through Hyrule Town. You've got to do the whole cat box puzzle thing. It's not like as big and layered as an actual dungeon would be, right? But there is something there. Like there's an element of gameplay that has to be accomplished in order to do this. I think that's notable.
Yeah, no, I always appreciate the in-between sections being meaningful, but not bloated. Twilight Princess felt like it was getting bloated and then abruptly went to not meaningful. And they never really struck the balance between the two. This section of Minish Cap, I think the fetch quest was a little much, bordering on bloated, but never quite got there, but remained meaningful throughout. So I think that this section really struck a balance. It almost didn't, but it ended up in a good place.
Can I just say that cats in this game, when you're Minish size, will mess your shit up.
They're so mean, dude. They're so mean, and I don't know who hurt the creators of most video games that have cats being mean creatures, but I have never personally experienced this. I am a huge cat person, and it makes me sad to think that people think cats are jerks like this, because I don't think that they are.
I mean, I live with a cat who is a jerk, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your cat's a psycho.
I also am a very big cat person and think that they get an unfair rap in a lot of
you have one
culture.
Psycho cat, and you also have the most snuggly cat that's ever existed in the universe simultaneously. So, like,
if Bia saw a Minish-sized creature like sauntering across our living room floor, then that thing's dead. Like, Bia is a hunter.
That's true.
Bia is a hunter of all things that are not human-sized.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Okay. All right. So it's just their hunter instinct. They're not just jerks. Okay. Well, I can get on board with that.
Yeah, they can't help it. All right. Millions of years of evolution. All right.
They are the perfect hunters and carnivores. They are uniquely designed for it. There you go.
Yeah. See, it's not their fault. Feel bad for the cats. Don't hate them. All right. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, like I said, there's enough that's padding out this fetch quest to keep it interesting. And I think that that's the most important thing to be keeping in mind. I thought it was hysterical too, by the way, like not only the titles of the books that these people had checked out, but did either of you go over to the bulletin board in the library and see the names of the other books that were available to?
Yes.
I called Matt over from the couch while we were on vacation and said, dude, this is hilarious. Capcom writers, amazing. The one about the likes was particularly my favorite.
So here's the titles of all the books that the bulletin board says are in the library. Married to a Moblin, Gorman's Guide to Good Grub. Learn to like your like, a good guide to a bad pet.
That one is hilarious, dude.
Killed me. I'm trying
that one is so funny.
I'm trying to imagine somebody putting a leash around a like what part of the tube do you stick it on, you know?
I think just around the middle like a belt.
Okay, we've got High Rule on 10 rupees a day, which sounds like a really great tourist guide.
That does sound fun.
Yeah, we've got REM's Anthology for Sleepless Nights, which is play on REM, right? Rapid eye movement. And then the final one. So your son wants to be a hero. It could be verse. Verse is in like the verse of a song.
That's funny.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was clever. I liked it. I got a good.
No, those were all good.
I would definitely read Learn to Like Your Like. I think that would be a fascinating tome to explore.
It sounds like something you give to a person who's a not cat person who marries a cat person, and it's like, here's a book on how to realize that cats are good.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, it reminds me of those crazy people who like, you know, there's a category of pet that you're not legally allowed to own, but if you file for the right permits and whatnot, it's like technically, yes, you can get. I'm thinking of like serval cats,
Tiger King,
yeah, like Tiger King type stuff, or you know, like exotic marsupials, or like I don't know.
There's that type of fox that is like very cat-like.
Oh,
I've heard that you can domesticate
fennec
them.
foxes or something like that. Right. Like there's a bunch of animals out there that are just kind of like, if you Google, does this make a good pet? Google will be like, no, these make terrible pets. But if you were dumb enough to try it, here's some text on how to make it slightly less horrendous for yourself. This is what that reminded me of.
Really random off topic, but on topic for what you're saying. I have heard skunks make great pets if you get them
deglanded. Yeah, I've heard that too.
I've heard that they're very sweet and cuddly, and they look really soft, to be honest, if you like bathe them.
Yeah, without the gland, I mean, they're basically just more cuddly ferrets is what I've heard.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever seen one run? They look like their hips are dislocated. It's so weird.
I mean, they kind of waddle, don't they?
So funny. Yeah, like running around your house, like waddling.
I mean, they're really cute animals, honestly. Like, you know, I don't know.
They got a built-in racing stripe, man.
They do. They're built for speed. Actually, not because of the aforementioned, you know, hip sauntering issue, but.
Hip dysplasia.
Exactly. Yeah. But they are super cute. But anyway, the library itself is a pretty fun location too. This is something that I continue thinking is pretty fun, is like Castletown just continues unlocking more and more of itself as you go further into the game. Right. I would say at this point about 2/3, 3/4 of the whole town are unlocked. You could not get into the library before this whole sequence of events. It's actually completely locked until you talk to the wisest of the wise, Minish, in Lake Hylia. And once you do that, then you're able to get in this building. So anyway, we get all these library books returned back to the library. We fulfill our civic duty. I just want to say this is maybe one of the most like Boy Scout adjacent fetch quests that Link ever does, right? It's like, you know, it's not a good thing to keep your library books checked out for too long. You know, it's inconsiderate to other people. Literacy is a gift for all. So we get the books checked back in, and we're able to go talk to Librari, who in maniacal evil genius form, instead of just giving us flippers, drops us through a trap door into a dungeon, and we have to go earn them ourselves.
This really was one of the all-time like hard left turns that the game takes. Just like, oh, cool, I did this fetch quest. Now I get the flippers. Ha! No, trapdoor. Ha! I'm just like, oh, okay, trapdoor. There we go. That was really, it caught me by surprise, but in a way that made me kind of chuckle.
You got to be impressed. I want to know what the logistics are of having this trapdoor installed from the library all the way down to this secret pit where the flippers are, you know, like,
yeah. And like who did the work?
Yeah, do you get a contractor for this, or did Librari just like chip away at this over a long period of time? I'm not really sure. It's making me question the complete lack of trapdoors in my own personal life. I feel like I've got room.
I mean,
one.
if it's that easy, I feel like we should be able to make one. You want to put one in your office, or where do you want it?
Well, but then the question, I mean, you can't have a trapdoor just to have a trapdoor, right? It's got to go somewhere that's at least as cool as the trapdoor itself. Preferably cooler.
And Texas doesn't have basements. What are you going to drop them into? The ground?
Look, all I'm going to say is, why not trapdoor? I feel like you're limiting yourself there. So,
you know
what I think? I think that Link has an adamantium covered skeleton, because holy crap, this man falls down so many stories.
He does. He falls a lot.
And like his back, his legs, they're all fine. Adamantium is the only thing that I can.
I think that Link has so much joint damage that he's got to wear that crazy leg brace that Bruce Wayne gets in The Dark Knight Rises. Where
that's good too. Yeah.
You see it one time and it's never explained again, but apparently it like allows him to overcome having no cartilage in his joints, and also he can kick through brick walls. I don't know. I never really
that was pretty cool. Yeah. I never really quite figured out how that one worked, but it was cool.
Why not? It's okay.
They should have had Bruce Wayne in The Dark Knight Rises always walking with a cane when he's not being Batman.
Well, he
that would just be so classic.
He was until he got this crazy leg brace that lets him kick through solid walls. It was crazy. Could use some more explanation on the wild leg brace. But anyway, we get the flippers. We're finally allowed to swim. There was much rejoicing. Swimming is great. Once you get through this whole section, once you get through the fetch quest and the library books are returned, it's really not that much time before you can actually get into the Temple of Droplets, because there was nothing really between you and the temple besides getting the flippers and being able to swim. So that's nice. I mean, the journey is very short. You just hit that wind crest one more time. I got to say, I enjoy these version of the flippers. I know that, so in most top-down Zelda games, you've got the whole system where you're swimming on the surface and you push a button, you can go under the surface to protect yourself from attacks or whatever. And you can also swim faster if you decide you want to do that. These have an extra weird layer of stuff going on though, which is that you have got, so it took me a while to figure out what was a platform that I could swim onto and what wasn't. Did either of y'all have that same experience?
It took me one or two tries. Like I figured out that as long as it has the little shallows or it's got a dock, then you're like pretty good. But other than that, don't try.
It's not like it's hard. Like once you understand the visual language that the game has established, then it's all good to go. The thing is, it's just different than every other top-down Zelda game that I can think of, right?
Look, all I know is that I'm really glad that the game doesn't take any hearts away from you for falling into water.
I definitely do appreciate that very much. And it's not like I spend a lot of time falling into the water, right? But it's one of those things where in some other top-down Zelda games, you do lose health for it. And it's always like, look, I just feel like this is maybe a step too far. I don't know that we needed this extra level of punishment for this sort of thing. So, yeah, I am in agreement with you. But we do have our flippers now, and so it's not something that we ever have to worry about again. Thank goodness. So, do we have anything else that we want to talk about in this section of the game before we actually start our discussion about the Temple of Droplets?
I have one thing. Not about the game, so we can wait until Matt has said his piece about a game if he wants to.
Nope, I'm good.
Cool, go for it, Jackson.
All right, it's time for Whiskey Bit Part 2.
Yeah,
Magnus Cigar Blend.
All righty, lay it on us. And so, how'd you feel about that Stag Junior?
Oh man, so Stag Junior 22A is one of the. It is very fruit forward and that makes it very nice and different. It sets it apart. This Joseph Magnus cigar blend, however, is extremely, extremely rich and dark, and it's got tons of fruit-forward notes, but not the same as the Stag. More like plums, and
You're making my mouth water, and I have a very good whiskey already. So you're making me envious when I really have no cause to be. Got no room to complain over here. But it sounds delicious.
Oh, it's delicious. The only thing that would make it better is if I was recording outdoors and could enjoy that cigar batch with a nice cigar.
It's almost 10 degrees outside, so something tells me you're probably going to be happier.
Probably not going to do that.
Inside, yeah.
Oh, I'm definitely not going to do that. No.
Stay inside, please. We love you with all of your fingers and toes. We're invested in you keeping them. Frostbite is a bitch. All right, let's go ahead and get into part 3 then, which is the dungeon map, where we talk about this week's dungeon from mechanics to music and more. This week's dungeon is the Temple of Droplets, and like we teased at the beginning of the episode, this is our water dungeon of the game, which, you know, it's funny because in top-down Zelda games, right, the extent to which a dungeon is the water dungeon or not is usually just down to, like, is it the one where you have to use the flippers for the first time? And that's what this one is. The Temple of Droplets is located in the very middle of Lake Hylia. And I do want to say, too, that I think it's fun that you're just supposed to be familiar enough with the visual language of, like, Minish shrinking portals at this time to know that icicle, or not icicle, that block of ice that has a little shrinking stump looking hole in it is like, oh yeah, I should probably try to get in there. That seems like a pretty important place to be.
Get in there, Lewis.
Yeah, get in there, Lewis. Exactly. It is interesting. Fun bit of trivia. I was doing a little bit of research, and the game code actually has a screenshot of a different entrance for the Temple of Droplets. It looks like at some point there was like an actual doorway and a gate to it that you could get to in Minish size. You didn't do the shrinking stump animation to get into it. So why they changed away from that, no idea. But if you feel like doing some research on that, you can go online and see what the entrance to the Temple of Droplets looked like originally. It's quite interesting, if I do say so myself. But anyway,
Lyndon, question. Do you know that because you have the original guide?
I do have the original guide, but I didn't see it in the guide. I just saw it on the wiki when I was doing research on the temple. There's a screenshot of it at the bottom.
You mean Zelda Wiki? ZeldaWiki.wiki?
ZeldaWiki.wiki, not ZeldaFandom.wiki or whichever unholy one that is. Yeah, Cody would never speak to me again if I was not promoting ZeldaWiki.wiki, because that one's actually moderated by good people. All right. Go to ZeldaWiki.wiki. I forget which part of the Sacred Realms rundown that is. I don't know if it's part.
I think that's generally part like 12 or something.
17 or 18. I don't know.
It's in the high numbers. Yeah.
I truly do not remember. Anyway, the Temple of Droplets is this game's water dungeon. It is split into 3 floors, although the 3rd floor is very, very, very small. It's primarily just 2 floors. You spend a lot of time going back and forth between the floors. There is some interaction between all of these different floors in the form of retractable doorways that let sunlight into lower rooms. So a main mechanic of this dungeon is in melting blocks of ice as soon as they're exposed to these shafts of sunlight. Usually those contain keys, small keys, big keys, that sort of thing. The main item of this dungeon is the Lantern of Flames, which allows you to melt blocks of ice and also to cast light in dark rooms. As far as enemies are concerned, this dungeon contains most of the same suite of enemies that we've seen in other Minish-sized dungeons. We've got the Mulldozers, the Pestos, we've got the Scissor Beetles, and Matterpillar mini-bosses. We actually, I think, have 2 different Matterpillar mini-boss fights in this dungeon. And one of them throws 2 at you at the same time, which is kind of a fun expansion of that whole theme. Let's see, what else do we have? Aside from that, a main recurring theme of this dungeon is the fact that it is frozen. So there's a lot of ice-based puzzles and mechanics in here. Sliding ice block puzzles, a lot of slippery floors, that kind of thing. And that is the Temple of Droplets, just in a quick and easy summary. Jackson, I'm going to throw it to you first. How did you feel about the Temple of Droplets?
I think compared to the Temple of Winds, it was certainly less confusing to get around. which I liked. I thought the Temple of Winds was a little bit too indirect and confusing. Like, I know there was the level system, but there was also the room system, which was at times like just kind of frustrating. I was like, which room do I have to go in now on, and on which floor do I have to do it? But in Temple of Droplets, it's a little bit more straightforward. The dungeon item, I didn't think I would enjoy when I first got it. I'm like, oh, great, you can light up rooms. Oh, no. But then when you figure out that you can use it to like actually like light people on fire, I was like, hey, this is pretty great,
The thing,
Wait, you can light people on fire with the lantern?
we haven't really had occasion for this to matter yet. But once you get the Lantern of Flames, you can burn the wrappings off of the Gibdos, and they just become Stalfos, and they're a lot easier to deal with. So that is a fun side effect of the lantern that I really do appreciate.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of then, because I was like, I thought I did, and y'all's reaction was, but that's probably what I was thinking.
Yeah, I will say too, the thing that I love so much about the Lantern of Flames is the noise that it makes when you pull it out and turn it on. It just sounds really powerful. It's like, boom, like you're ready to incinerate the world. It doesn't really look like that. I think, and again, I know we're getting straight into the dungeon item here, but the lantern, while looking cool, I can't really shake the disappointment that this wasn't a fire rod, right? Like why couldn't we have just made
the fire rod was better for sure.
But whatever, you can't have everything in life. And there are some puzzles that this thing is good for that a fire rod wouldn't have worked for, right? Especially like the illumination component, where like there's a sphere of illumination around you whenever you're holding it in a dark room. Fire rods don't typically do that. So whatever. The thing about this dungeon for me is that I really, really, really enjoyed it. I definitely liked it more than the Temple of Wind. I think that any dungeon that has slippery floors and sliding ice block puzzles immediately has got to do some work to get me on its side.
Yes. Amen.
Yes, absolutely. There's one puzzle at the pretty early part of this dungeon where you have to duplicate yourself and stand on the little circles. And oh my gosh, it might not just be an ice problem. It's also a duplication issue. Is whenever you hit a solid object with your duplicate, he disappears and you have to start over. And man, I don't know why, but with the ice, I was just constantly hitting things, and it was just like barely like his shoulder or something was hitting it, and he was disappearing and got on my nerves.
So is this the room?
That was the most
I think I
obvious.
know the one you're talking about. It's the one that's just like a super long room, and it's got 2 rows of blocks in the middle of it. I'm looking at a picture now.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a super long room with 2 rows of 7 blocks each, so 14 blocks total. And basically, what you have to do is you have to make it all the way across that room with your duplicates in order to stand on the switches in a certain specific pattern. And the 2 things that you're fighting against here are, one, like you said, Jackson, the slipperiness of the floors and the fact that if your duplicates run into walls, they go away. But also the duplicates are timed, which I don't think I had ever really realized until this dungeon. Like the little meter underneath your hearts that shows up whenever you can create duplicates with the Picori blade. Once that
I noticed that this time too.
Once that meter is empty, your duplicates go away. And I think the reason I hadn't noticed that is because it's like I had never needed to do anything before that required me to have them up for such a long period of time. But in this room, there's like precision movement that you have to do. And so you're trying to be careful and precise in order to not screw up the puzzle, but also you've got to do it somewhat quickly. Otherwise, your 2 bros are going away.
And you know what? To the puzzle point, one good thing about this room is I like the moving ice blocks puzzle, and I like it a lot more than other similar types of puzzles we've gotten in other dungeons in this game. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because the sound they make and they go all the way across is like so satisfying, and that you push them and they go shh, clink, and I like that. But I feel like it just works better than other dungeons.
You are on your own in that one, my friend.
Yeah, I never really enjoy these in any game that they feature. I mean, I didn't love it in Twilight Princess. I don't love it here. I think the reason is that Well, for one thing, if you screw it up, you always have to leave the room and come back, right? And so that's kind of a pain in the butt. I don't appreciate that. But it's tough because you're looking at the arrangement of the blocks and trying to like figure it out in your mind, right? Like if this one moves here and then this one moves here and then this one moves here, then does that work? And for me, maybe I just don't have the kind of problem solving brain that's necessary to really get these quickly and easily. But I never get it on the first try. I always have to just screw around with it for a while.
We've had that a lot in this game, and it's not exclusive to this dungeon. I just think, like in other times, it's been like getting to the fire temple on the mount. You have to move around all those rocks, and if you do it in the wrong way, then you can't push them certain ways. You get stuck. You have to exit the room and come back. So it's just different ways of doing the same thing, and rather than pushing rocks on the floor and finding out which directions they can move and most of the time getting it wrong, I prefer this ice solution.
Yeah, I mean, look, you were entitled to your wrong opinion, and I'm not going to try and take it away from you. I mean, and I mean that honestly. Like, if you enjoy sliding ice block puzzles, then good for you. Like, I'm happy for you. I didn't hate it. I enjoyed, like I said, I enjoyed this dungeon quite a lot. And the sliding ice block puzzles by no means ruined it for me. I felt like they were used sparingly enough. If there had been any more of them, then it might have been a major hassle. But as it stands, it's totally fine. Anyone who really enjoys this kind of thing, let us know. Social media and the Discord. We'd love to know how big this club of people is who just like sliding ice block puzzles.
If you think that sliding ice block puzzles are the best puzzles ever invented in any video game, do let us know so we can block you on everything.
I will say Jackson is right about one thing. The sound effect that these things make when they hit each other is oddly satisfying. Like there's a thunk that they make. That's I don't know. It's good sound design. I think I definitely get what you're saying there, Jackson. It scratches a fun brain itch for some reason. I don't know what it is. But
ASMR can kick my butt for good sound effects.
Well, there you go. That's a quote from Jackson Willoughby that will live on the internet forever. Yeah. So one thing I do want to talk about real quick too. Did anyone else think it was super cool and fun that you get the boss key just straight up front in here?
I thought that was very interesting. It was definitely an inversion of the normal Zelda formula that I thought was fun.
And it's so neat. Go Jackson.
It does make it feel. It makes it feel really unique, but also it helps the pacing feel different. It helps you feel like, oh man, like, wow, we're really going through this dungeon now. Like this is going along really well. Yeah. Or it kind of makes you feel like, oh, maybe I hacked something and I like did it out of order. Oh, I'm so cool.
Well, because the reality is it's not like it's a super short dungeon. It's not like you get the boss key and then it's like, okay, now on to the boss. And that was a bite-sized dungeon, right? It's like, it's still a regularly sized dungeon, but there's something so fun thematically about like, oh, I unlocked the boss room pretty much first thing, except here's this other extenuating circumstance, which means that I still have lots of dungeon left to do. I think that's a really good time. In this case, it's so fun and interesting because once you get into the boss room, you realize the thing that's going to keep you moving through the dungeon is the fact that the boss is frozen and you have to find some way to thaw it out. So that's another thing that's super interesting to me is that it just shows you what the boss is basically right up top. And not only that, but it's a boss that Matt, you and I said we thought would be really cool if we saw in this game a few weeks ago. And I said that not knowing that it was going to actually be a boss.
I know. Literally people probably thought when they heard that, they were like, oh, you guys just know what's coming. Blah, blah, blah. No, totally did not remember that this happened. And it's pretty cool. I'm here for it.
So question, was it not immediately obvious to y'all like what that was when you saw it frozen? Like, or
no, I knew what
I
knew what it was, and I knew that it was the boss, but I think 3 or 4 episodes ago, I think in the first episode, actually, when we fought the big green chew, we said that it would be really fun to fight, like, if all the bosses of all the dungeons were just big enemies or normal-sized enemies that were large because you were Minish. And one of them was like an Octorok, and like we said that and not knowing that actually
Yeah. And I'm glad that it did. Like, I think it's so super stinking fun. We'll talk about the boss fight when we actually get to it, but just the anticipation, like seeing just a giant frozen Octorok. It's like, okay, cool. Can't wait to get through this dungeon and get to that experience. It's really effective at building tension and excitement for what's going to come next. So I have a question about a few different puzzles specifically. Did either of you get tripped up on the I forget what the actual text on the sign is, but it's something like the solution is at the bottom of the pot. Did either of you get tripped up on that?
I saw that and I was just like, oh, that's kind of weird. And then I swam into the next room and saw the pot and I was like, oh, got it.
Yeah. How about you, Jackson?
Yeah. No, pretty much the same thing. I didn't really realize it was a pot. I just kind of saw the little like enclosure that you could go into. And so I dove down and all of a sudden I had a small key. I was like,
so the reason I think this is so funny is, and this is just a byproduct of having done this podcast now for like 3 years. So you remember back in the Link's Awakening season when, and actually I think this was true in Legend of Zelda as well. There was the whole theme of like, oh, when you look at the map of a dungeon, you realize that it has like a shape, like it's a skull or it's a key or whatever. Yeah. Okay. So when I saw this sign and I knew I was searching for a key, and I see the sign and it says the solution is at the bottom of the pot. The very first thing that I did before I took even another step was open up my dungeon map. And wouldn't you know it, the arrangement of this dungeon is in the shape of a jar. Like, of a Zelda jar. Go look at a picture.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, it looks like a Zelda pot. Like it's got a lip and it's got handles on the side, and that's totally what it looks like. And so as soon as I saw that, I was thinking to myself, "Oh yeah, I'm a Zelda expert. People probably got super tripped up on this, but I knew what was up. I knew to go look at the dungeon map." And then I go into the next room over, and it's even more specific than that. There's a freaking pot made of blocks in the middle of the water. I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well,
you overthought it."
That knowledge didn't help me even a little bit. It did make me wonder if that was the original intention, because the thing is, that room is at the bottom of the dungeon map. Like it's at the bottom of the pot when you look at the map, right? So it works both ways. That's fun. It made me wonder if it was like the original intention was to be checking the dungeon map in that way, but then they were worried that it was too obtuse, and we're like, well, let's just make a block. Let's make a block arrangement that looks like a pot, and then that'll do it for this puzzle. Personally, I think that's a bit of a cop out, but that's just
They went easy mode when they should have stayed on.
Yeah, that's my Zelda elitist take right there.
Yeah, in a kid's game. Come on.
right. I was happy to see the return of the Gus Jar lily pads here.
Yes, I do think that's one of the good puzzles that this game does. And it's another instance of this game doing something very well that a lot of Zelda games don't do well, specifically Twilight Princess, which is they don't generally use items from other dungeons. And this game continues to excel in that area. And I very appreciate it.
I thought it was super fun that you have to drop this lily pad from one floor down to another via a waterfall. Like that was a fun moment.
I liked that. I liked that a lot as well.
Jackson, we were talking before recording and you said you had something you wanted to mention about movement while on the lily pads or something like that.
Yeah. So I noticed that with the D-pad, you can't just turn around and stay in place. You actually move a step in whichever direction you turn your character, which resulted in one or two times falling off the lily pad into the water, which when you have the flippers isn't a big deal. But it's just like kind of annoying. It's like, why can't you pivot? And I have more movement-esque based things to say while we were in the boss room. So we'll get to that later if you would remind me. But
I do think,
that's
even though you have the flippers, I think you could make a case for it being unnecessarily annoying. What you're talking about, Jackson, given that when you fall into the water, there are certain specific places that you can get back out with the flippers. You can't just like hop back onto any old platform, right? So it is potentially putting you in a situation where you've got to do some backtracking if that does happen to you. That didn't happen to me specifically, but I can see a world in which that does take place and it might annoy somebody. So I don't know. But regardless, the lily pad puzzles are fun. Did either of you do a fair amount of backtracking in this dungeon once you had the flame lantern? Like even to an extent, like more so than you necessarily had to. There were a few rooms that had frozen blocks and stuff that I remembered from earlier in the dungeon that I could have gone to the boss and beaten the temple, right? But I remembered it's like, oh, I have the lantern now. I wonder if there was a heart piece in any of these. I'm going to go back and check it out.
I got some stuff, but I didn't do everything. Like after I got a few things on the same side of the dungeon that you got the lantern in, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm here. I unlocked the boss room. I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. I didn't bother with the other side, but I looked it up on Zelda Universe to make sure I didn't like miss anything. And it was just, you can get a red kinstone and some rupees. I was like,
yeah. And so
I didn't do a lot of backtracking, mostly because once I had the compass, I was mostly tracking like where all of the chests and stuff were, and I don't think that heart pieces are in chests necessarily, but I was just like, I don't know. I didn't do it. I probably should have.
So there was no heart piece in here, by the way. Like the ending to this story.
That's so weird.
The ending to this story was not, and at the end I found a heart piece. Like there wasn't one. And that's something that's starting to annoy me a little bit. I wish that these dungeons would have like a consistent rule about that. Like there is a heart piece in every dungeon in the Minish cap, or there are 2 heart pieces or whatever. Like, now it's just kind of getting to the point where I get to the very end. There's nothing, like I have the compass, there's nothing left on the map. I know I didn't miss anything, but I'm still worried about it. Like, I don't know. I really feel like there should have been something else. I don't know. I'm finding plenty of heart pieces out in the world, so it's tough to complain about, but
yeah, I think that's fair.
I want order. I want some semblance of order and consistency to my gameplay experience.
Well, and just level setting expectations, right?
Yeah. I agree, but I have also found so many heart pieces through side quests in this game that I feel like is not nearly as common in other Zelda games, and that just might be me being crazy, but it seems like you get a lot of heart pieces without doing main storyline stuff.
Oh, for sure. I mean, this game throws heart pieces at you, which I appreciate, but just more in dungeons, right? It's the Breath of the Wild shrine extra chest effect that we've talked about once or twice on here before, right? Like, give me that one extra thing to go for while I'm in here, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's see. So, in terms of mini boss, do we want to talk about the mini boss in this dungeon?
Yeah, go for it. I think it's fun.
I think it's big fun. I was not expecting to fight another Chew, much less a more powerful version of the Chew that we fought in the Deepwood Shrine. It's actually kind of fun because when you consider the differences that the blue Chew has over the green Chew, you're kind of getting 2 main boss fights in this dungeon, right?
Right.
Oh, I thought so for sure.
Which cool. I'll take that any day of the week. The difference, of course, being, the fight works basically the exact same way that it does in Deepwood Shrine, except this blue Chew in Temple of Droplets is an electric Chew. And so anytime that it's got its electricity up, it's in an immunity phase, and you aren't able to use the gust jar to knock its feet out from under it. But yeah, I mean,
it's not just that. I feel like it was more aggressive as well. I felt like it charged you a lot more, as well as shooting you with lightning on occasion. Yeah. The part that really pissed me off was it's not just immune in its shocking you electric phase, it's immune in its charge up phase too. And so it feels like most of the encounter it's immune. It just kind of got on my nerves a little bit. I thought if they lowered the amount of time that it was immune, that it would have been a more fun fight, because it's already extra aggressive and it shocks you. So I thought it was just a little bit too far.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily get that. more than anything else, I just think it's big fun fighting these guys. I mean, I have a smile across my face that's almost as big as the one on the Chew's face anytime I do this, just because of how ridiculous it is. And I don't know, I enjoyed it a lot. And as a mini boss, I mean, what more could you really hope for than this? Without the mini boss being expressly more fun than the boss of the dungeon, I think this is best case scenario.
It really helps cement that this is, I think, a better dungeon than the Temple of Winds.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think that that's true for a few different reasons. One of them really, though, is the fact that I always felt like I knew where I was in this dungeon versus the Temple of Winds, which looked pretty samey all the way through. Yeah, I don't know. I think it has a lot more personality as well. I actually think that's been sort of true of all the Minish dungeons in the game so far. Like when I think about Deepwood Shrine and Temple of Droplets versus Cave of Flames and the Wind Ruins, you know, I think the two Minish-sized dungeons are clearly superior.
I would agree with that completely.
I do,
and
as well.
I think that's for a few different reasons: mechanics, items, enemies, whatever. But just the miniaturization of things and knowing that that's the setting that you're in, it adds an extra layer of fun on top of everything else. And it's one of the reasons that I don't know. It's one of the reasons that those tend to stand out for me, because that's not the kind of thing that you can do in any top-down Zelda game, right? Wind Ruins and Cave of Flames, those could have come more or less from any top-down Zelda game.
Yeah, I think that Minish Cap really keeping its identity here is a plus, and I think you said it pretty well, Lyndon. I don't have too much more to add on it, honestly. I think so far the miniaturized dungeons are by far better.
How do y'all feel about fighting two Matterhorns at the same time, or not Matterhorns, Matterpillars?
That was actually very challenging, especially because it was on the ice, so I was constantly slipping around all the time, and I couldn't really get a full damage phase in on the tail. That was definitely challenging, for sure.
I 100% agreed. I actually got kind of lucky, though. So it wasn't nearly as hard for me because I got both to go in a square, but in opposite directions. And so I got to hit the nose and the butt of them both back to back. And that helped a lot. But I mean, other than that, like I did run into them a lot. They ran into me. It just seemed like I was losing more hearts in this dungeon than I should have been.
I definitely took a lot of hits in this dungeon, and I had to. So I've got 3 bottles now, and I went in with 2 fairies and Lon Lon milk. And I definitely had to use one of my fairies halfway through because I was starting to get pretty low. It wasn't necessarily that I was taking a lot of hits from enemies. There are several rooms in this dungeon where you're on pretty narrow walkways and it's easy to fall off into the abyss, right? If you just kind of like slide in the wrong direction. And I don't know, man, like it's the ice dungeon. I'm going to allow it, right? But I don't know that this is ever going to be the most fun that I'm having in a Zelda game. It's like tiptoeing across slippery floors, like above a bottomless pit.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's just not. I don't know. I've never really been a fan of the of the slippery slidey stuff. It's just not fun to me. Same thing as like quicksand. Like I don't ever think that quicksand in a game is fun.
Like I'm looking at the
Super Mario 64. Looking at you, quicksand.
Oh God, right? Yeah. I'm looking at the far east room of the first floor, and that's the one where it's the it's a super long room, and it's got a big crisscrossing connecting ice walkway, and it's the one where in the very middle of the walkway is that like chain of green traps that are rotating around, right? And you have to like get into the middle of them and then wait for them to rotate around and then go out the opening that they make. So some precision movement is required, and you definitely have to watch what you're doing. And if you fall off the ledge at any point in that super long room, it takes you all the way very back to the beginning, right? And you've got to do it all over again, which, not my favorite. Yeah. Let's see. Any other observations we have about this temple before we go and talk about our big Octorok friend at the very end of it?
I thought it was really clever to have you duplicate yourself to push the valves open to melt the Octorok compared to everything else you do with the levers in the dungeon. It was a nice, little tiny addition. Just a nice detail.
That just made them feel bigger and more important.
Yeah, exactly. It was activating the switch. It's like in every war movie when they're about to launch the nukes and you have to insert 2 keys and turn them at the same time. It's that little extra, like, you really think you're going to do this? You really want to do this?
It's that moment where they both put the keys in at the same time, turn, nod, turn the keys at the same time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so funny. I'm looking at the map of this dungeon, and I love it so much that it's like you've got your intro room, and the boss room is right there, and that's the chamber where the element is supposed to be. It's like, sometimes I think that the people who design temples in Hyrule are sadists, where it's like, I'm going to make this the most labyrinthine, complex system of tunnels and caverns and whatnot that I can. And there are going to be so many things that are going to try and kill you in order for you to get this super important thing. But the person who made the Temple of Droplets was like, nah, dog, if you get in here, if you want it bad enough, like, here it is. You've got the foyer, and then the next room over, get your element, You got the foyer.
Yeah,
exactly. But best laid plans and all that. I don't think that person was accounting for frozen Octorok, which just messed the whole thing up. But it's not the designer's fault. It's
really messes up the feng shui.
It does in an unfortunate way. Well, speaking of the big frozen red Octorok, let's talk about this fight. Jackson, how do you feel about our big Octorok friend?
This guy pissed me off.
Oh, yeah? Tell us all about it.
I will. So you remember earlier I said that I had more things to say about movement in Minish Cap other than lily pad directional changes.
I recall that from 5 minutes ago, yes.
Yeah. Well, it was in this fight that it really kind of just pissed me off because there's no directional hitting. Like, when you hit a rock that an Octorok shoots at you, if you're not looking directly at him, if you're even slightly at an angle, you're gonna miss him completely. And I missed quite a few rocks because of that, and then would immediately get sucked in. So this guy took quite a lot of hits off of me, and I had a really harder than I should have time hitting him back with the rocks. Unless you're looking directly at him. But in the final 2 stages, that puts you at real risk of getting sucked in because you got to bait him into looking at you one specific way. And in order to do that, you got to stand still, and then he's going to suck you in his mouth and then, phrase it.
You definitely have to do a little bit of a dance with this Octorok. And that's kind of done 2 separate ways, right? Like, first, the whole process of trying to get around behind it whenever it's in the phase where you can light its little chain of flowers on fire. You got to be very delicate about that, right? Like, you've got to try to go all the way around one way and then go back around the other and just kind of chip away at it until you finally manage to get in position to light those flowers on fire with the lantern. But what you were saying was definitely also true, Jackson. Like, you've got to be pretty delicate, especially in the later stages about, when is it going to shoot a rock and when is it not going to shoot a rock and how are you going to know which is which? I do have to say that I thought it was really fun, the process of just deflecting the rocks back at it. I always like playing Dead Man's Volley with Ganon or Ganondorf, right? I had no idea I was going to be playing...
Tennis.
What? Tennis, exactly.
You get to play tennis.
Yeah, I had no idea I was going to be playing Frozen Octorok's Volley with this boss fight. So that's a ton of fun. And especially since this game doesn't have a Ganon or a Ganondorf, and I don't know if we're going to be getting that experience with Vati. Nice to know that it was here and that I got to play a little back and forth of that kind. I did think is super interesting. I mean, so the green chew that you fight in Deepwood Shrine looks identical to any old green chew that you're going to see out in the world. The Octorok is a little different, right? It's not just a big Octorok just by itself. It's got that like coating of flowers and foliage on it, which you don't see on the enemy model whenever you're big Link. So I thought that was
This boy is Blastoise cosplaying.
Hey, there it is. Yeah. Okay. You're right.
Or Blastoise.
No.
Or
Venusaur.
I get you could also do Venusaur. Yeah. Well, Blastoise because he has like a shell, but Venusaur because he's got plants on his shell.
It's like an unholy mixture of things, is what you're saying.
And he shoots rocks, which is kind of like a Venusaur type thing, like shooting objects at you. But then he's on ice, so water. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I thought that this was a really fun boss fight overall. Thematically, I have some questions. Like, why does this Octorok have the magical ability to freeze and unfreeze water at the drop of a hat?
Because he swallowed the gem.
Oh.
Yeah, he swallowed the
water element.
He swallowed the water element.
Okay, there you go. That's good headcanon, Jackson. You just came up with that right off the cuff.
I mean,
he
curbed it.
I was expecting no good explanation there. It's like it is this way because it need to be this way for a video game. But your reason is good. You use your noggin on that, and I'm proud of you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Matt, how'd you feel about giant frozen Octorok boss fight?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. It took me a very long time to figure out to reflect his rocks back at him with the shield. And the only reason is because his own rocks kept hitting him from the walls. So I didn't think that was what needed to happen because I dodged them enough that they would hit him from the walls. And I was like, oh, well, that didn't stun him or anything. So I guess that's not what I'm supposed to do. And then I finally did it with my shield and it worked. I kept trying to get around him to the backside without stunning him. And that just was not working. So yeah, that's kind of, I had a little bit of difficulty at the front end, but we came around. We came around to it.
Just
we got it.
Just as an FYI, you don't have to use the shield to do this. I used my sword. You can play tennis with the sword.
Yeah. See, I didn't know that
I did
either.
too. I played it with the sword, and I actually think the shield might have been a little bit easier. I mean, you would have been hit less.
The shield was easy. Once I figured out that that's what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, well, with the shield, you have baked-in immunity, right? Like if you swing with the sword and miss, then you're getting hit with the rock, right? But if you just have the shield up, then all's good. Like you're not taking the hit no matter what happens. So, but yeah, I totally agree. If you had to put it up against the Chew boss fights, Octorok versus Chews, which one do you think is more fun?
I think the Octorok was probably more fun, just because there was some more variability to it.
Yeah. Had phases and all that. And I mean, it definitely takes a good amount of time to make it through this boss, right? It's not one that you can just burn through quick and easy. I mean, you've got to go through the whole process 3 times, and he's getting more and more aggressive with each new phase. So
I do like that. The damaging the boss portion is unusual. You have to light the thing on fire. It's not slashing him like you do over and over and over again with every single boss. I like that. It's a little different.
Yeah. Like I do agree. I do agree. Well, anyway, we light this thing on fire enough times and we finally gain access to the water element that makes it 3 out of 4. It's good times. Do we have anything else that we want to say about this dungeon before we get out of the dungeon map?
I do not personally. I other than overall, I really liked this dungeon. I thought it was good. Like you said at the beginning, Lyndon, starting out on kind of a weird foot with the sliding blocks and the slow moving and like all of that, but it really ended up being a very good experience. I think that I enjoyed quite a lot.
Can I just say, I think it's hysterical how when you have a key in a frozen block, it's just a key in a frozen block. But when you have the big key in a frozen block, the frozen block has frozen ice horns coming out of it. It's like just
it's very
just
extra.
In case you weren't clear what's inside this block you're about to thaw out. It is the big key. The horns, did you see the horns? Did they tip you off? Okay, cool. Yeah, it's the big key block. So yeah, I liked that. Of course, the real reason for that is that, like, you know, if you're the person making the art for this game, you don't want players to be getting confused about these things, right? Like, you want to give as many clues as possible, but I still thought it was funny.
I do like how this game, Matt already said this a little bit with the item discussion, but I like how this game uses aspects of other dungeons in other dungeons as you continue, like the doors opening thing, falling through platforms and things like that aren't new concepts. And I like that they're being brought forward. It feels like it's all the same world that way. Like, it feels like there's variations on this world that we're in rather than just everything being completely different.
I do agree, Jackson. Got a good point there. All right, let's go ahead and get into part 4, which is Bloopy Trails, where we talk about interesting things that diverted our attention this week. Matt, I'm going to send it to you first.
Man, I did a lot of kinstoning and got a lot of heart pieces. I got the biggest wallet. I got the large quiver. I mean, dude, I did a lot of stuff this week. And man, I'm just realizing there is so much to do in this game. And like almost all of it's tied to kinstones in some way, shape, or form. But like it's just, there's so much to do, and in a good way, like in a very good way. So I think I'm just gonna leave it at that because I could go on.
Do you think that the kinstones?
You know what? The other one I'm gonna mention is the mini game for where you go to sleep and he puts you in a room full of enemies. That one was.
I haven't done that yet.
Yeah,
where's that at?
Oh, it was really cool. Yeah,
it's awesome.
It's the one in Hyrule Castletown with the ghost on top.
Yep, the purple ghost building. You go in and you fall asleep in the bed, and you just go and you destroy a murder room.
Okay.
You get a lot for it.
I'm going to do that first thing when I log back on because that sounds like a great time. Do either of y'all feel like kinstones are becoming a bit much at this point? Like maybe they're just getting used for one too many things in this game?
I do, yeah. They're too common. Like green kinstones are common. They're also random. And I'm surprised how many like red and blue kinstones there are. Like I feel like pretty much anywhere you go, you run into at least 3 people that you can like share kinstones with. It's just a little bit too common. If it was a little bit more rare, it'd feel like, oh man, that's really cool. Like I did that, like a collection, you know. I feel like Link's Awakening had a similar problem with the collectible item in that game. Like it was just a little bit too much, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I do think that maybe they're being used a bit too much as like just a catch-all for side quests generally in this game. I wish that there was like another solution that they were kind of comfortable using. I don't hate it because it is one of the main systems and mechanics of Minish Cap, and so of course they're going to lean on it quite a lot. And I still do think that it's pretty charming. Like the text that you get from NPCs whenever you fuse kinstones with them, and then you know, just the dopamine rush of trying to figure out like what's going to happen whenever you do it successfully. You know, I still think that continues to be fun. Max made a point in the Discord the other day that he was of the opinion that maybe kinstones were getting used for one too many main quest adjacent things, right? Aside from side quest stuff, like maybe we're relying on kinstones a bit too often to move us from one plot point to the next, right? Like the statues in the Caster Wilds, and then a similar thing happens this coming week. I do think that there's validity to that. I can kind of see where he's coming from. But just in terms of side quests, I don't think they're necessarily outstaying their welcome for me. I will, of course, let y'all know if that changes. For me, the big one this week was like, yes, of course, I did tons and tons of Kinstone stuff. I started the house rental quest with the oracles from Oracle of Seasons and Ages this week, which was a lot of fun. And if you haven't, if you haven't been over there yet, the hotel in Hyrule Town it is playing host to Din, Nehru, and Faror as they exist in the Oracle games. And basically, they're looking for places to stay. They're in from out of town, and they don't know where to stay. And you can go through a side questy process of getting rental homes set up for two of them. You have to choose which two. There's no situation where you can get all three of them into a rental home. And the reward that you get from doing this is that each one of them has a charm that you can put in a bottle. And you can use that charm anytime you want, and it gives you a buff. So Din's, the red charm, is an attack buff. Nehru's is a defense buff. And then Faror's is a combination of both that is not as powerful as any one of them individually. So, the buffs themselves don't last too terribly long. It's like the same situation as having to choose between the blue or the red armor in the color dungeon in Link's Awakening. I think that's a more fun and better system because it's a permanent thing, Here it lasts for a few seconds and then it's gone, which is a little inherently disappointing, but what you gonna do? Like it's a pretty powerful buff in and of itself. But that's the reward that you get from doing that. I ran into Tingle and a few of his brothers this week. I still don't know what reward you get from fusing Kinstones with all of them, but I think I've got 2 of them now.
So I'm pretty sure the Tingle thing is the same as the Goron side quest. You add Gorons to the cause. If you have visited the Goron that's in the field by where everyone's digging up stuff, south of Lon Lon Ranch, that's part of this whole Goron side quest. Right. You have to eventually recruit like 6 Gorons to help this one dude break down a wall, and you get a whole big chest full of stuff.
Yeah, so they're definitely separate quests. I know the reward that you get from the Goron one. It's a bottle. That's how you get the 4th bottle. I don't know what reward you get from doing Tingle and his brothers, like fusing the Kinstones with them. So that's definitely going to be something to look out for. But jury's out on that. Let's see. Oh, I played the lottery not the lottery, but the Game of Chance mini game where you go in and you can choose between 2 chests, and you have a 50-50 chance of getting either rupees or busting out. I made it through 3 rooms, and I think I got 40 rupees before I decided to duck out and, just not put the rest of my winnings at risk. Those games
I did it once. And I went, I'm getting out on top, bitches.
Right. Exactly. That's always a good feeling. Yeah. I mean, look, I don't know. I never loved those sorts of mini games in Zelda because they're not that inherently fun to play. And also there's almost always better ways to get rupees, right?
That's because you're not a gambler, Lyndon.
I am not. It is true.
There's also like infinite amount of rupees.
There's so many
fully
rupees.
loaded. I fully loaded my biggest wallet so fast.
Yeah, I'm not hurting for rupees at all, man.
Yeah, I'm definitely not either. So, like I said, not too much incentive to do or to spend too much time in that one. I had another one that I wanted to bring up, and I lost it. Crap, what was it? Oh, yeah. So the other thing that I did was if you fuse Kinstones with the Stranger. He's in a house in the northwest of Castletown. He's the guy wearing the turban. If you fuse Kinstones with him, then it opens up a portal that takes you to a mysterious building that you can't get out of it. Like, you can't walk out of this building to anywhere else. And it's implied to be the home of the stranger. Like, he says he's from a distant land, and when you walk through this portal, you get warped into this house, and it's implied to be wherever he's from. But it's like a 4-story house, and at the very top, there's a grandpa who's being haunted by a ghost. And if you want to free Grandpa from the influence of this ghost, you have to use the gust jar, and you can pull the ghost away from him. And then you don't get anything for that right up top after doing it. But I went back to this location later at the point in the game where I'm at now, and you do get a very cool reward for doing that. So as soon as possible, if you haven't yet, I would go fuse kinstones with the stranger in the house in Castletown. And do that, because you can miss out on something pretty neat if you wait too long on it. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
So there's something there that I want to mention, is that it's something that's been talked about in our Discord a lot, which is Minish Cap has a lot of missable items. Like, if you don't do things in a certain time frame, you just like can't get them. So I think it's important to mention that. That's not very common in Zelda games, as far as I'm aware. So it's definitely a unique thing.
Yeah, and this is definitely one of those items. So again, I want to say it, PSA, if you haven't gotten there yet, go fuse kinstones with the stranger in the house before you start doing the this coming week's dungeon portion of game, because I think at that point you can no longer get the item that you get rewarded from having done this whole side quest. So so yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. But the reward's very cool, so highly recommend it. But anyway, yeah, I think that's all I have for Bloopy Trails. Jackson, how about you?
Yeah, man. A lot like Matt, I have got biggest wallet. I've got the large quiver. I've got the big bomb bag. I've got, all of the items you can get up to this point. 3 jars. So absolutely no shortage of nothing over here either. And I've also fused tons of kinstones with people. Gotten a lot of heart pieces. I've got 3 hearts on my second row, which I think is the most you can have at this point. Absolutely trucking through.
I'm not sure exactly how many heart pieces I have at the moment. I haven't been keeping track, but yeah, I've been picking up a ton. I'm definitely not hurting for health at the moment.
I'm also really liking some of the fun side quest things like the room you guys talked about, Matt, where you go in and fight all the people. I really liked that. I've had fun with that Goron quest, actually. That's also been really nice. Going back and like solving problems in Lon Lon Ranch, like getting the key to get the heart piece. You get the key inside the house. You unlock the door for them. That was fun. I don't know. There's a lot of things, and I'm probably forgetting tons of them. Talking to cats, just silly stuff like that. I've had so much fun. So many little things you can get just stuck into.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. It is a game of very impressive side quests, and that's something that I'm really, really enjoying about it so far. And this week was no exception. All right, y'all, let's go ahead and get into part 5, which is Z-targeting, where we lock on to fascinating characters or enemies that we happen to cross. I'll go first this week. I was actually having kind of a tough time. I was down between 2 options. The one that I'm going to go with is the proprietor of the Chance minigame in Castletown. I don't know this guy's name, but never in the world has there been a proprietor of a gambling establishment who was so unenthused about making money on his gambling establishment. Like,
dude, he was literally just like, oh no, a customer. Blah. Like, it's like he didn't want you there. Yeah. Like, why would you open a game show thing if you don't want people there?
It's like this.
It feels like he feels bad for ripping people off. Like it's not actually his. Like maybe like some guy asked him to run it for the day, and he's like morally objectifying to gambling. It's like, no, please don't let me take your money. don't give me your money so I can give you more.
It's like, no. I think you may be in the wrong line of work here, pal. Just saying, maybe
no doubt.
Maybe baking is for you. Maybe open a landscaping business. I'm not sure. Like.
Maybe he has the worst luck and he just loses tons of money. And he's the first person ever to run a gambling establishment and lose money.
Not the first person. Z-targeting. I'm going to go with the library Minish guy. I think it's just really fun that he's basically like Yoda and just hanging out in a book and dispensing wisdom as he sees fit. And dude just seems like he's got a pretty good gig. And he's a crotchety old man who drops people through trapdoors. That's a very Yoda move. I could totally see Yoda dropping Luke through a trapdoor. But yeah, I like this guy. He's kind of fun.
Cool, good pick. So are you talking about Librari?
Yeah, Librari.
Okay. Who is totally... You got to assume he was named that before he ever lived in a library.
You know what? I like to think that he adopted it as like a moniker. He changed his own name to fit his lifestyle.
Or was it that he never really truly had any options in life other than to live in a library, specifically because of his name?
Because of his name. He just was fated for
exactly,
it.
Exactly, right.
His parents chose that life for him.
Yeah, like really, the story of Librari is a pretty tragic one once you actually start breaking it down, I think.
If you follow that line of thinking, yes.
Exactly. How about you, Jackson?
Well, Matt took it out of my mouth and even made the exact comparison I was going to make to him and Yoda. So I'll go with my backup. My backup is the mayor, which you have to trade kinstones with him to get to his lake house so that you can, get to Lake Hylia and all that stuff. So I can't tell if this guy is like absolutely horrible at his job or like corrupt, because like apparently he takes a lot of vacation at his lake house and people in the town didn't seem too pleased with him, and he seemed kind of like a weirdo. He's got a hole in his backyard and stuff. It's just really strange. Like there's something's up with this dude, like either the people are ignorant or I don't know. It is weird. This guy gives off bad
The people of Hyrule Town are like, and the mayor has now spent 50 days of his term golfing.
Full 3/4 of his term spent on vacation.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yikes. Right. Yeah. So, I totally agree. Mayor Hagen is an interesting one. He has a fondness for masks. I don't know. This dude seems like he's, I don't know, like maybe not someone I would go somewhere alone with for any long period of time.
Can we just say that anyone whose hobby is mask collecting really gives off bad vibes? Like that freaks me out for some reason.
You mean masks?
Masks. he likes the masks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You just been
schismed. Yeah.
I got you.
I pick up with what you're both putting down. Very much so. Yeah. I do think it's interesting. What's up with the creepy hole in his backyard? I don't know. I have questions. Everyone has questions. Are they going to be answered? Probably not. Actually, I know it's what's in the hole in his backyard. I don't. It is a side quest in and of itself, and I'm not sure what the final result of it is. But I was chipping away at something down there, so we'll see. I'll catch back up on that here in a few weeks. But basically, there's an area under Hyrule Town, and it's got 3 separate entrances with rocks that you can roll away only from one specific side. And there's a chest in the very middle of those 3 rocks. And I've now moved 2 of the rocks. And I don't know what is in the chest. I haven't moved the 3rd rock yet. So,
you know what I think? Maybe the mayor is a crab person, and that's his lair where he's going to hide his crab people to come and invade Hyrule Town. This is a South Park joke, I guess.
Oh, I was about to say, I'm not versed in the crab people humor, I guess.
It's an early season South Park thing. They like every few episodes or like a couple episodes a season, they bring back like this thought that like crab people like are going to like rule the world one day.
I'm ashamed to say that the crab joke went straight over my head. Yeah.
That's really sad. Don't you just hate when bits totally miss?
Bad bit moment.
It was a bad bit moment, Jackson. I hate that for you, but we have to call it what it was. We got to be intellectually honest with ourselves.
Hey. There's no shame in having the bad bit moment as long as you share it with friends who are well versed in bad bit moments.
No shame.
I've had plenty of bad bit moments myself, yeah.
So many bad bit moments.
My land to did not land ratio is staggering. So yeah, I get you. But part of that too is that most of my bits are being played on my wife, who like she exists in like default eye roll these days. So like,
especially towards you, which is fair.
Yeah. No, I can't. I don't blame her. Like I would eye roll the hell out of myself as well. It's like I got to be objective about these things. All right. I think that brings us to the end of part 5. Let's go ahead and get into part 6, which is our final thoughts in which we let Matt wrap up this section of the game in as succinct a way as he can think to do.
We continue our exploration of the Minish Cap with a whole lot of side quests, a whole lot of story, and a whole lot of dungeon activity. We get the flippers, we get another element, we get a great dungeon, we get to meet a whole huge cast of characters, and just generally speaking, continue our exploration of this truly fantastic, bite-sized little game, and enjoy our time thoroughly. Look forward to next week, where we progress the story further and look towards the sky for our final element.
Well done as always, Matt. I gotta say, I'm super excited because a Jackson / detective double feature sounds like nothing but a good time to me. I don't know.
Hey, there you go.
Ooh, I would love that.
Yeah, it's well, we've got you on this week, Jackson, and Mike's up next week. So I mean, we're kind of stacking the deck here, but it's gonna be a really great time.
One day, the 4 of us will be on pod, and that will be a 4-hour pod of drunken.
I was gonna say
that'll be our Sacred Realms After Dark finale.
Yeah, if that isn't, then nothing is. Like I don't know that the internet is capable of handling that amount of concentrated pod. Like that's a terrifying possibility to me. But I'm down to find out if it's doable. Jackson, thank you so much for coming on this week. I know that, like we said, I know you love this game, and I'm sure that you would have come on more than once if it was an option, but truly the great tragedy of this season of Sacred Realms is that it is just not possible to have everybody on as many times as we normally would, or as much as we would want to. So it's just a very tiny little game.
Yeah, it is a tiny game, but it's a ton of fun.
Absolutely. Usually this is the part of the show where I
also Tiny and Minish. I see.
Yeah.
Well, what can I say? I'm a clever man, Jackson. I'm a very witty individual.
Oh, don't pat yourself on the back too much.
Okay, I'll pat myself on the back just a very small amount.
Just a tad.
Jackson, this is the part of the show where I normally let our guests drop their social channels and tell us what they're up to. Since the last time you were on the show, you fired up a whole side thing that you're doing, which our listeners have heard about. We gave them the spiel on the episode where you were kind enough to donate us your wedding blend of whiskey. But there's no substitute like hearing it straight from the horse's mouth. So feel free to give us the rundown on what you're up to these days with Whiskey Trek.
Yeah. Hey guys. So follow whiskey _trek on Instagram. Go to our YouTube channel and please subscribe at Whiskey Trek on YouTube. We're also on TikTok, and so we're having a lot of fun. We're going to be doing podcasts pretty soon as well. Not like a regular weekly podcast like Sacred Realms, but just an occasional have fun and chit chat kind of thing. So be looking on podcasts near you for a Shuttlecraft Whiskey, a Whiskey Trek podcast coming soon. So thanks, y'all.
And of course, this is just, this is Jackson's outlet to talk about whiskey even more so than he does just in his day-to-day life. But what's the elevator pitch on Whiskey Trek and what it is?
Yeah, so Whiskey Trek is me and my wife exploring whiskey, maybe going out hunting for bottles, visiting distilleries, going on our whiskey treks, and also providing some humor and just being goofy, having fun with it.
And yours truly has been a guest on Whiskey Trek as well, where we get to talk about some scotch, which was super fun. So yeah, I think Lyndon and I will probably be semi-regular appearances, just as Jackson is on our show. So if you like Whiskey Bit, or if you like whiskey in general, Jackson is a wealth of information and highly recommend you check out their channel. And his wife is a wonderful social media coordinator and really does a great job putting all that stuff together. So
yours truly did the logo and the branding for Whiskey Trek, which I was very proud to contribute, I have to say. So,
yep, that's accurate. That's accurate. And it does look great. And it's not copyright infringement at all.
Which is good. I was actually, in hindsight, a little worried about that. But, glad to hear I'm not breaking any major rules or laws or anything. But regardless, thanks for coming on, Jackson. And I definitely encourage everyone to go give Whiskey Trek a follow if that's something that you're into. Jackson's doing great work over there. And of course, we'll have him back on the show at some time before too long. Just looking at the list of games that we have left to play, Jackson, we've got such hits and bangers as Majora's Mask, Tears of the Kingdom, and the Oracle games. And if any of those strike your fancy, you can come on to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like a good time. I'm always down for a funky good time.
Yeah. How far did you get in Tears of the Kingdom?
I got about halfway through before I got busy, and then it just kind of dropped off my radar.
How long has it? Yeah. How long has it been since you picked it up?
3 months.
Okay, that's not so long that you couldn't get back into it. I would hop back into it and at least play most of it and beat it. That way you're up to date and you can feature on that season of the podcast in full knowledge of what you're talking about, which we prefer people to have.
That's going to be fun, and that's coming up way too fast.
Yeah.
Way too fast.
I don't think... Did we figure out if that's going to be before the end of the year or not, Matt? I think it is.
I actually don't think it will be.
Really? You might be right. I don't know.
It depends how we break up Majora's Mask, mostly.
Yeah, okay. I need to go math on that. But anyway, gonna be fun to figure it out. Regardless, it's late. Matt, you ready to get out of here for the week?
Let's do it.
Sounds good. We'll be back at it in a few days to record with the Detective Mike, and that's going to be a great time. But for now, let's wrap up this episode. If you enjoyed this episode of Sacred Realms and would like a little extra Sacred Realms in your life, you can head over to patreon.com/Sacred Realms Pod and get access to bonus content, listener mail, all kinds of extra fun things. Let's see. If you've got no rupees, it's not a problem. 5-star Apple Podcast reviews are a great free way to support us. More reviews means that more people see our show. That makes us very happy. Hylians. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Sacred Realms Pod for updates on the podcast and for behind the scenes action. Sacred Realms will be back next Wednesday with our thoughts on the Minish Cap Chapter 5. We'd love for you to play along with us and to share your thoughts on our social channels. The Minish Cap can be played in a variety of places, most of them not easily anymore. The Nintendo Game Boy Advance, a variety of virtual console listings, the Ambassador program on the 3DS. Of course, the way that most of you will be playing it is the same way Matt and I are playing it, which is on the Nintendo Switch online via the subscription service. Of course, you can also emulate the game via a variety of platforms, but we ask that you not do that unless you legally own the version of the game that you are emulating. But in the meantime, may your hearts be full, may your arrows never miss. We'll catch y'all next time. Sacred Realms is an independent, listener-supported podcast, which is produced, edited, and mixed by me, Lyndon Willoughby. Business operations are handled by Matt Willoughby. Our music is generously provided by Darknuck and is available to listen to on Spotify. Finally, we'd like to thank Nintendo for continuing to create such exceptional and innovative experiences.